All right, weekly chit chat. I've got one topic that I want to cover or try to cover, and then the rest will just be random thoughts, and maybe I'll skim through my notes and see what comes up. All right, the first thing I want to address is lawfare, what they call lawfare, using the law against people that normally wouldn't be accused of anything because they didn't break the law. Uh, it reminds me of a saying, find me the man and I'll find the crime. It's an old Soviet saying. It's being used uh, all too often these days. All right. Now, that's pretty obvious. But what I wanted to discuss a little bit is the mentality behind why it's being used and why it's effective and why people get taken in and accept lawfare. Now, it doesn't take the entire population to accept it or participate in it. It just takes usually members of the judiciary. Now, when the United States was being formed and the Declaration of Independence was written, up until that time, many people were persecuted by judges who would impose or who would accuse people of crimes and impose unjust sentences and that sort of thing, because you were either a political dissident or someone paid the judge to do this, that sort of thing. It's a corrupt sort of thing. It doesn't have to be that corrupt to be extremely harmful. That it may become that corrupt eventually if it's allowed to become normalized, especially when we're talking about political conflicts. It arises a lot of times because of politics, and politics is becoming the number one thing on social media these days, and also on traditional media and within journalism. All right. So everyone now is talking about things in political ways. All right. So getting back to this lawfare thing, I've got some notes. The first thing that's established is one side, or maybe all sides, will pick their heroes, and then their heroes will be above the law. Now, it takes time to put this in place. It doesn't take that long because a lot of times their heroes are wealthy and powerful to begin with, and those people do not get prosecuted as often as everybody else. All right, so it's just a small step to get them practically immune from prosecution. Once that happens, once they're pretty much immune, you start going after your enemies who are not so immune. All right, and whoever is the best at this immunity game is the one that comes out ahead. All right. Now, you have a bunch of useful idiots watching this whole thing play out. And the useful idiots will find the one that's the most successful at this lawfare game, the one that has the most immunity, and join that side. All right. Now, why would they join that side when it's clearly the worst thing you could possibly do? Because you're just going to promote lawlessness. Well, the main reason, in my opinion, is vengeance. Vengeance fuels this sort of thing among the people that join the winning side or the most powerful side in this lawfare type of scenario. Why vengeance? I mean, what are they vengeful about? Well, there's a lot of things you could be vengeful about, but the primary thing this is my opinion, and I'm seeing it, and social media brings this out. The primary motivation for vengeance among people who join this sort of lawfare thing is a hatred of criticism. They want a vengeance for being criticized and for being shunned or being ignored or told that they're crazy, which they are in many cases, and that sort of thing. They want vengeance for being criticized. There's a lot of people out there who exhibit narcissistic traits, who feel that criticism and condemnation are the worst possible things that could ever happen, and they want vengeance. And they will go after, or they will join sides. They won't go after. They'll join sides that are powerful at going after people with this lawfare thing. Now, those are the useful idiots. Why do the higher-ups engage in lawfare? It's an intimidation tactic, mainly. Sometimes it leads to nothing, but it's an intimidation tactic because it creates misery in your life and often causes things in your life to fail, things that you are trying to do in your life become interfered with. Lawfare can very sneakily, it's very sneaky at violating your rights. It can violate your rights by just simply interfering with your life, and not directly, but indirectly. Like I said, a lot of this doesn't go anywhere, but it causes an enormous inconvenience. It causes failure, and it can be relentless. All right? And the side that's doing it looks righteous. So it's like a win-win for the ones that can get away with this. All right. And a lot of times also, to bring charges against someone that you know is not going to go anywhere, the charges aren't really going to go anywhere, it's just going to be fought in the courts, and then nothing's going to really happen. One of the main tactics of doing it is to see if the defendant is going to violate some of the process, like lying to investigators, missing court appointments, and that sort of thing. They can get you for sure on violations of the process if they're not able to get you on some other violations. So that's one of the motives. And one of the things that leads to success in this sort of thing with lawfare. They can get you on the violations of the process. Now, they're immune to violations of the process because their side has this law immunity that's been built up over time. All right? It's entrenched corruption. All right. Now, getting back to the useful idiots again, I'm seeing a lot of people, especially online, that think this game is actually moral. This is a moral thing to do. This is a rational thing to do. This is something that actually works without any really bad, evil look to it, other than the corruption, the established corruption of the lawmakers, which they can just say, well, everyone is corrupt. You know, it's nothing new. So it gives you, or it gives them, the useful idiots, a way out. They can't really be accused. They can't really be accused of being evil because this doesn't appear to be evil, and it's a very subtle way of violating human rights without actually directly violating the rights. Okay, because you're going to trial, you get trials by jury in many cases. You know, a lot of times those juries are handpicked and so forth. It's stacked against you, but you still get to exercise your rights to a trial by jury, rights to sometimes a quick trial. All these things are still in place. So it violates your rights indirectly by causing you delays, hardships, misery, emotional stress, and all those kind of things. And this kind of thing, those kind of things add up, and the financial burden, those kind of things add up and cause you misery, which I guess the exception is it could be considered a violation of your right to pursue your mental health. All right. The one exception could be that we can pinpoint that this is evil is that it violates your right to pursue mental health. It affects your mental health for sure. It surely affects your financial health, but everyone that goes through this court system stuff and this these things has to pay. You know, it's just part of the process. So that's not really an outstanding or a thing that we can pick and put our finger on that it's a violation of human rights. But the mental health thing could be the one exception where we can pinpoint, right? And the fact that we don't have a clear understanding of mental health is not a coincidence. Yeah. Okay, so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the mentality, because this kind of mentality of getting away with violating human rights in a way that is indirect is something we need to be vigilant about. And first we have to know the motivation. The motivation is vengeance. That's the motivation. It's revenge. All right. Now, the people who are enjoying this at the bottom, they'll throw condemnations at people who are being accused, and they'll say something like, "You are being accused of your crimes." Instead of saying the rational thing, "You're being accused of crimes," they'll say, "You're being accused of your crimes." Right? There's a difference there. It's a subtle difference, but if you hang on it with all of your strength, that difference becomes a major argument point. You are being accused of your crimes, instead of saying you are being accused of crimes. See how they make that leap? They make that leap of logic so that it sounds like you have committed crimes because you are being accused of your crimes. That mentality is what I've been thinking about. The mentality that would say a statement like, "You are being accused of your crimes," instead of saying you are being accused of crimes. What mentality would actually say that sort of thing? And then stick by it and then double down. You can say, well, they're just being accused of crimes. No, 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 no. They're being accused of their crimes. They double down on it, even though they know it's not rational to think that way. Because, you know, they're not necessarily being accused of something that they actually are guilty of, you know. They might not be guilty of what they're accused of, in other words. That's why we have a presumption of innocence, supposedly, in this country. There's also this problem of people from other countries getting in on the conversation too. Ones that are used to that sort of mentality just because of, you know, their culture has been corrupted previously. Yeah, so they get in on the arguments too. All right. Yeah, it gets into being sadistic as well. Vengeance and sadism. I should include sadism as well. So that's what I was trying to figure out. It has to be vengeance and sadism. And it's due to mental illness of the useful idiots. And this kind of insanity can be instilled in people. Yeah. There are things in society and within culture and literature that can reinforce this mentality of vengeance and sadism against the enemy. So yeah. All right. I'm noticing that online, within 10 minutes of being online, you see it. Yeah. And it's not just the statement, you are being accused of your crimes. There's other statements that make that leap to guilt. Yeah, it speaks to your lack of blah, blah, blah. This action that you perform speaks to your blah, 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 so that it looks like the result follows the premise. But they're making a leap of logic because just because you say that someone is guilty of something doesn't mean that's what they are. And just because they act in a certain way doesn't mean that they're doing something in their minds that's wrong or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could mean that, but it doesn't. You don't make that leap. All right? But if you're not thinking right, or if you are not prepared for that kind of argument against you, you don't know what to say in defense of, this activity that you're doing speaks to certain things that imply your guilt. Yeah, it's accusations based on how it looks and the words that people use to make you seem guilty. People will use certain words and phrases in orders of their in the order of the words and the specific words to make it look as if you are guilty. And this is not a violation of your rights. All right, unless the exception is if it violates your mental health, which it can if you continue to participate in these types of arguments. You try to defend yourself, and they say, "No, this speaks to what you really are." Blah blah blah. You can start to go nuts. So that might be the exception, but otherwise, it doesn't violate rights. It's just free speech. It's just stupid people acting stupid. You don't have to pay attention to it. A lot of times, it affects people who are not trained to resist this sort of nonsense, and it does affect your mental health. And sometimes it affects your mental health to such an extent that you say, well, if I can't beat them, let's join them, and I'll join in with this particular vengeful and sadistic type of speech. That's the danger. It spreads. This attitude and this posture online and this aggressive and vitriolic way of speaking seems to be what everyone ends up participating in if you're online often long enough. If you're online long enough, you pick up this vitriolic, very aggressive, very nitpickety, grasping and depending on certain phrases and words and other attitudes through practice. You pick it up through practice over time, being online long enough, you get this attitude. I'm trying to think of a good example. But yeah, no, you just get online into a discussion, especially political discussions, and immediately there's vindictiveness and vitriol. And you can see these people who obviously practiced and they don't have any typos in their responses. They make sure they don't have a typo because that's one of the first things they'll go after when they look at how you respond. They'll be able to pick out weaknesses, and one of the first ones is typos. Oh, you don't know how to spell such and such, you must be a moron. That sort of thing. Your inability to spell certain words speaks to your inability to think and that you're a moron. That kind of thing. An inability to form cohesive thoughts, and inability to become rational or truthful. All right. They'll find little weaknesses. The first one that they'll try to find is the way that you spell words. It's infuriating. And they do it on purpose too, a lot of times, to infuriate you so they can say, see, your anger speaks to your lack of moral standards. Yeah, that sort of thing. All right. I hear a lot about, I'm going to change the subject a little bit. I hear a lot about red pills, white pills, black pills, that sort of thing. Are you red pilled or are you black pilled or something like that? Whatever. It's in reference to the movie The Matrix. When you take, I think you take the red pill and you wake up and the Matrix spits you out, and you spit out into the world of reality. Okay. I don't remember the movie that well of why you get spit out after taking the red pill, but that's what happens. The biggest red pill you can take, the biggest red pill that you can take, in my opinion, is to start studying logic, rationality, morality based on human rights, the proper role of government. These things combined, that's the biggest red pill you can take. Because everything, once you start looking clearly at the world and know how to find truth through testing and through logic, make sure there's no contradictions, you see the world is upside down, totally upside down, because today's world is operating in that opposite realm of rationality. Why are they operating in that realm? Because it requires not only an extremely high level of intelligence to operate in that realm. It takes extremely high level of intelligence to operate in any high leadership position, regardless of what you might think. It takes at least some sort of intelligence, a high level of intelligence in some capacity to operate at a high level of power. Right? So it does take that, but it takes even more intelligence in the form of cunning and scheming to operate in the world that's irrational. How do you make this chaos your home and succeed in a world of chaos? That requires more than just simple intelligence and know-how and skills. That requires cunning and an extra layer of mental abilities that include manipulation, manipulation is the big one, intimidation, physical presence, that sort of thing, so that you can speak a lie, but it seems like you're telling the truth just because of your presence, your physical appearance, your presence, your way of speaking, and your seeming understanding of the ways of the world. All right? Which is true. You understand how to operate within a world of chaos. It requires an extra layer, an extra skill level, a big skill level to operate in that world and be successful. But it's success in a weird way. Okay? And I'm going to try to get into this more later. The people that operate at a high level in this opposite world of chaos and irrationality and morality based on feelings and that sort of thing, and just constructions that sound right. These people, I lost my train of thought, but these people operate at in this other realm in order, they operate in this other realm in such a way that they can cause failure, and they are successful in a way, because if everyone else is failing except them, then they are the successful one. They use failure to make themselves successful, but without actually accomplishing much. If they can make everyone else fail and they're not, they're sustaining their life, they're making money, they're being able to take care of their health or whatever, and operate and manipulate things, but everyone else is having a struggle and falling and failing and being miserable. Just by that fact, they are successful. Just by the fact that they are not crashing or suffering or in misery or failing, they are successful. And they are experts at knowing how to cause failure. That's their main avenue of success. So if that's their main avenue of success, the causing of everyone else's failure, then it becomes a philosophy where causing failure is the greatest of all skills. Because you really don't need to be skillful at anything other than basic survival. And if you make everybody else fail, then you are by default the successful one without really doing anything except surviving. You're not contributing to society. You're not contributing to the survival of the species. You're not really contributing anything. You're just surviving in an arena where everyone else is suffocating. And you're causing the suffocation. All right? So these people that are successful in that realm often rely on their ability to cause failure. And it's my opinion that that's the primary way that they exist. One of the reasons why I believe this is because if you look at the potential of what could be, what is the alternative? What could be happening? And you'll see that a lot of positive things could be happening that are not. Why are they not? Why are some countries, let's say as an example, with lots of natural resources and intelligent, how should I say, not intelligent, but well-run universities and knowledgeable people, not a success? These schools in some of these countries with natural resources that are abundant are excellent schools, and the students know multiple languages, and they know how to be engineers by default because of the curriculum is so intensive. And yet most of the population is in poverty. It's because some countries have adopted this operational principle that if they can cause everyone else to fail, then they'll be on top without actually improving themselves, just maintaining or even declining slightly. It doesn't even matter. As long as they're not crashing, they're more successful than everybody else. So they sabotage everybody else. And then it becomes, well, if you sabotage me, I'm going to sabotage you because I can see it's working for you, so I'm going to try it myself. And it becomes this vicious sabotage game where everyone is trying to cause everyone to fail. You'll see this once you become rational. In my opinion, you'll see it almost right away, that why all this failure when there doesn't need to be? Why all this poverty when there doesn't really need to be? There are plenty of ways to be productive. One of the reasons, I think the main reason, is because there are a lot of forces working against people to cause them to fail so that certain people who really don't do anything except survive are able to be on the top. All right. Let's see, what else? I talked about socialism several times already. I could talk about capitalism. Capitalism is not really a nice word, right? And for good reason, it's not a nice word because there's a lot of exploitation in capitalism. If it's done through monopoly power, as an example, but there are other ways you can pay off judges in the judiciary system. You can pay off politicians. You can use money that you gain in the market to influence politics and outcomes of trials and that sort of thing. And it could be very, very bad for society. So what I'm concerned mainly about, and what I will defend, is the free market. And the free market is the main thing about the free market is you have choice. You're not coerced into buying certain things because you have no other choice, either because there is nothing else available, or you're targeted for buying from the competition. You're penalized, targeted, and then penalized for buying from the competition in some way. Either you'll be on a watch list, you'll be denied banking services. Eventually, it'll get to the point where you won't have much choice. You'll have to buy from certain companies or whatnot. If the free market doesn't exist, if it starts to be controlled and certain companies or certain entities become too monopolistic. Now, some monopolies are not that bad because they can be bad, and it's not that good, but there's some monopolies that deserve it if they're producing the best product for the best price, that no one can beat them because either they got all the smart people or they just got in on it before everyone else. So they have the most experience, and it requires experience to be good at it, and everyone else is going to be lagging behind because they'll never have the same experience. That sort of thing. Those kind of monopolies are not that bad. A lot of them that are in that category deserve to be big companies because they provide the best services at the best price. But it requires a free market in order to know this. Yeah. The main struggle with anything free is the authoritarians. The authoritarians are the problem with anything that involves freedom. And I don't like this to be an us versus them kind of thing, but it gets to that point where, yeah, it's going to be us against authoritarians, because authoritarians basically are anti-freedom. Anything that's anti-freedom, that's what they're into. They don't think we have any choice anyway because of doctrines like, as an example, doctrines like determinism. We don't have choices anyway because we have determinism. What are you worried about? That sort of thing. We know that determinism is false. We know that. But they insist, they double down, and that for them, it works. And it does produce results, but usually the results are produced because it causes everyone to fail, and they're just the survivors. They don't really contribute much. And the reason why I say that, one of the reasons why I say that is because authoritarianism does not like criticism. And one of the things that advances through criticism that's extremely important is science, and advances in technology and advances in knowledge. Those things advance through criticism. So authoritarianism is anti-knowledge. Knowledge is always being renewed, and you have to criticize what is existing knowledge in order to find or to know where to insert new knowledge. If you criticize knowledge and there's nothing that sticks, so as far as the criticisms, if they're really not sticking, if they really have no effect, then yeah, that's knowledge because it stands up to the test of criticism. But sometimes there's weak spots, and we need to fill up those weak spots with the true knowledge instead of the false knowledge or knowledge that is incomplete. Authoritarianism puts a damper on all that because it does not accept criticism. It'll look to science to see what advantages it may give for control. And mainly what authoritarians are trying to control is the treasury and wealth production. That's the primary thing. Everything else is secondary, and there's a lot of other stuff. But that's the primary goal of authoritarians, is the control of wealth, because as the saying goes, wealth is power, and authoritarianism seeks to gain power. Why? The primary reason, in my opinion, is to instill and force upon everyone a false reality. Authoritarians hate to be challenged by reality, so they'll create an alternate. Even if they know it's fake, they're satisfied, even if it works short-term or temporarily, or just for a spark here and there, that it seems like, yeah, I have beaten reality because I've shown that we can operate in a way that doesn't match reality. So yeah, we are constantly fighting against authoritarians, and it's a mental illness. It is a mental illness, and a lot of the mentally ill are authoritarian. Now, there are other types that like authoritarian ways as well. And the basis of authoritarianism is to deny you choice. You don't have a choice. You got to do it this way. And they think the best way to do commerce is the same way. You don't have any choice. We know what you should buy and what you shouldn't buy. We know what's good and what's not. You're too dumb to make the choices on your own. The best way to engage in commerce is to show you what to buy, for how much, and what to do with it. That's their idea of commerce. We will give you the money, or I shouldn't say give, but in some cases, yeah, but we will allow you to use the money for certain things that we think are good in certain ways for a certain price. You don't have a choice. That's how to do commerce according to authoritarians. And it keeps moving in that direction. It's a slow creep. One of the worst things that can happen is for good times to make us relax. And you don't need to be assaulted. You don't need to be unconscious to be assaulted in your sleep. In my lifetime, we've fallen asleep at the wheel, and the car has run off the road and is going through the woods and the fields, and there's chaos. We fell asleep, and authoritarians moved in right under our noses because we thought everything was so good. We thought the economy was good. We thought the government was good. We thought our relationship with other countries was good. Everything was good. And the authoritarians crept in and solidified their hold, especially on the finances. And once they get control of the treasury, it's all over. It starts that pathway downhill. And we're seeing it. We don't have a government right now. We have a troupe of actors who are governing the mint. We have a troupe of actors, and this is a big stage for them. And their ultimate goal is to govern the mint. So we don't have a government. We have a troupe of actors governing the mint. Yeah. It's always the same result. Too much spending. Too much money printing. Not much choice. Suppression of competition. There are various ways to suppress competition. Insisting on high wages. But from companies that can afford to pay high wages, the insistence that that companies that can afford to pay more need to pay more disrupts the economy, and here's why. If a company is in a position to pay its workers more and does so, it puts pressure on all the other companies who are competing, including the small mom and pop shops, to pay more, or they lose the best people. So who ends up with the best people? The company that pays more. The other ones go out of business, so the company that pays more becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. It monopolizes. You can monopolize a market simply by paying your employees more than everybody else. It's a tool for monopolization. All right? Labor is paid according to the market, not according to how much employers can afford. It's paid according to the market. Businesses are a numbers game. Let's say a business like a store sells various products. What's the most important product in the store, let's say? Let's just pretend that the store has a lot of various things, but the most important things that they sell are the medicines in the pharmacy. Let's just say. Since those things are the most important, do you think it's logical for the company to start spending more money on those things because they're so important? Why not pay the people who are making these important medicines more? Why not pay those people more? They're making very important medicines. It's actually the most important thing that I have in my shop, in my store. I'm going to start paying them more because it's so important. Yeah, my employees are important too. So, okay, but these medicines save lives. My employees may not save lives, but these medicines are. So I'm going to start paying more for the medicines. You think that makes sense? No, because it's a numbers game. The medicines are priced according to the market, supposedly. It's gotten to the point where the medicine manufacturers are saying, well, we are important. You need to pay more. They're starting to get that idea that, yeah, there are industries that are more important than others. And when that happens, again, you get monopolies. The stores that are able to pay more for the medicines survive. The ones that can't pay more for those medicines, they go out of business. All right? So it limits the competition. You start paying more for anything. If you can afford to pay more and you start paying more for anything and it gives you an advantage, the competition goes away because they can't compete. They can't afford to pay the higher prices that other companies can, or take. Another way that happens is larger companies can take bigger losses when things like pandemics come around and cause everything to get shut down. Some bigger corporations have reserves that can weather through these crises times, and other smaller companies can't. Anything that causes a higher expense or a disruption in business favors the larger companies and favors monopolization. Don't get fooled. So many people get fooled, and I constantly see this. Don't get fooled by, well, this company can afford to pay more for blah, blah, blah. Why aren't they? They're being greedy. This is not right. They're missing, either intentionally or through ignorance, the concept that prices are determined by the market. It's a numbers game in a business. The numbers have to work. And if they make a profit, okay, sometimes there's a little bit of profit, sometimes there's a lot of profit, but it's a numbers game. If it's making a huge amount of profit, a big profit margin, other people jump in, the market becomes saturated, and these profit margins of each one go down. You still make profits, but they start to shrink. These profits start to shrink only through competition. All right. If you're a company that starts paying your employees more and your profits go down, eventually you're going to beat out the competition and your profits go back up. Because now you can set prices. Once you have a monopoly, you can set prices and you can bring the profits right back up. There's no competition. The only way to bring those profits down is to bring more competition in so you're all competing for that share of the pie. There has to be level competition. Okay. That's part of the free market. But anyway, I mean, everyone knows this. I'm talking about this kind of things because it just gets to be ignored. It's ignored online, especially, and all these little sound bites. And there's still especially the established supposed to be journalistic companies are promoting these illogical ideas and political ideas, and it all favors monopolization and lack of control. Not unsurprisingly, it's not surprising. It's not surprising that it's happening that way. All right, so let me see. I have some notes on addiction. Humanity has this thing where it's my opinion that it actually needs to be addicted to something. Humans can't operate unless they have an addiction of some sort or a passion. That's the nice way of saying that you have an addiction to something. Yeah, it seems like humanity can't operate unless it's addicted to something. Or humans can't operate unless they're intoxicated in some way. Both would be good. You're not only intoxicated in some way, but you're addicted to that intoxicant. Now you're motivated. Okay? It's a strange thing. I think it's unique to humanity that we tend to operate better, it seems, if we're addicted or intoxicated, or better yet, both. A lot of us burn ourselves out and die early because of this. Not everybody, but many. But many also accomplish great things because they have this addiction or intoxication effect. It's a weird thing. But I got to acknowledge it because it seems to be part of humanity these days. I've always tried to stay away from things that I would become addicted to, but there's a couple of things that I can't stay away from. Extremely powerful forces. One is the seeking of knowledge, and then the internet has this promise of being able to satisfy that need for more knowledge, but all you're getting now is propaganda and selective knowledge. And you're not getting how to search for the truth. You're just getting a lot of input, stimulus, and entertainment. Entertainment in a flash of an eye, as soon as you're online. It's all entertainment. And it's addictive. I don't have to get into other substances that are addictive. But yeah, I get taken in by this sensationalism online and immediately being stimulated and following different, especially with ADHD. I have symptoms of ADHD. I can get engrossed and deeply attached to watching things to the exclusion of everything else, and then go wherever it leads. It leads all over the place in many directions, and it's just fascinating. And you can just, all right, and be engrossed, and then look at the clock, and it's already an hour and a half that's gone past, and it feels like 15 minutes. Now, it might be common with everybody, but I can focus on something to the exclusion of everything else, and nothing else matters, and time has no meaning. Not only online, but in everyday life. I have a hard time keeping track of time. So I've tried to avoid addictions, so I don't get online all that much. But yeah, I do get online a lot of times when I should be doing other things. Now, other addictions like alcohol and tobacco and that kind of thing, I don't have a problem with that. Although I am starting to develop a fondness for cigars, and it probably has to do with the nicotine addiction. I think I may be developing an addiction to nicotine, and I'm liking the cigars more and more. They are irritating my throat, but I can't stop doing it. So then I know this is not the right way. I have to back off. It's extremely difficult to back off. I've done it with my diet, which is still extremely difficult to deal with, but the cigars thing is seeming to be even more difficult. In some ways, it's psychological. The psychological stuff is more difficult than the physical stuff. Because food, physically, the cravings for sweets is a lot stronger than the craving for nicotine. Or just a normal carbohydrate diet, picking up a tortilla, make a taco and just eat the whole thing. I don't eat grains or anything like that anymore, so I can't do that and stay on my diet. But I feel like I could do it. Sometimes it's an extremely powerful draw for me to start just eating normally again like I used to eat. That grasping on my brain is much stronger than the nicotine. The nicotine is more psychological. It's not a physical craving. Not yet, anyway. It's mostly psychological because, I'll puff on a cigar and then I'll relax. I can start to unwind a little bit. Not that I'm always tense, but I tend to get on a certain track and I stay on that track to the detriment of everything else, and I lose time that I'm supposed to be working on other things. So if I can find a way to just not immediately jump on this track or this track and stay on it all day, if I can find a better way to manage my time and maybe jump around a little bit better, I can do more than just one thing per day. Yeah, so I'm working on that. And I found that, humanity as a whole seems to be dependent on stimulants or intoxicants, I should say, and addictions heavily dependent on those two things in order to be productive. I've seen the most productive people are actually, they don't have a strong will necessarily. They have pulls, like an addiction or an intoxication will pull you towards something, or the desire to be intoxicated will pull you toward getting that thing so that you can be intoxicated. Right? I see very successful people who are smokers that smoke like chimneys, that obviously that smoking, they can't get over that addiction, so they are not people of strong will. Because if they were, they would give that up. They wouldn't be puffing on a cigarette like a chimney. They know it's bad and it's killing them, but they're still doing it. That means they don't have willpower or strength of will. So something else is driving them to be successful, and it's the pulling effect of intoxicants and addictions. This thing that they're doing in life is intoxicating them, and to get that intoxication, they need to pursue that. Okay. Are there good ways to do this? Is this useful for knowing? Is this useful to know so that you can proceed in a productive manner? Yeah. You just got to find the thing that draws you to be intoxicated that's not dangerous. It's almost impossible because eventually a lot of these things are just kind of dull after a while. They lose their luster. You do something, you get enticed to do it, and you do it a lot, and eventually you just get burnt out or let's move on. It doesn't have a pull on you like an addiction. An addiction will get you to do it even though it feels like you're harming yourself. Yeah, even if you are harming and you know you're harming yourself, you just can't stop doing it. A lot of things that will make you successful require that sort of self-punishment. For instance, to save money. Like if you look back in your past and you go, if I had only saved money, cut out these expenses, I could have had this much now. But if you think about all those times where you had very little money and how much you suffered, you would say, there's no way that I could actually spend years under that condition voluntarily so I can set money aside. Those times where I had no money were extremely miserable. I'm supposed to extend that for 20 years in order to save this big pot of money or in this investment it will pay off. You can look back and think, look, that's what I should have done, but when you actually do it, you have to live in misery for a long period of time to save that kind of money. It's almost impossible. Right? That's one example. So yeah, it's hard to find ways to stay motivated. You've got to activate your imagination. You've got to be able to activate your imagination and think of new ways. Because inevitably you'll get bored of this or that. So you've got to think of ways to either move into something else and come back, go back and forth, or just be successful at changing your paths and be good at various things. I don't know. I struggle with that right now. I can go back to work for someone else and make decent money. I'm trying not to do that for two reasons. One, I like the freedom of not having to be stuck in one area. And number two, it's bad for my health to be behind a desk because my skills are desk work, right? I still have to sit for long periods of time making things, but it's not exactly the same amount of stress. It's almost the same amount of stress, but it's not exactly. There's more movement. There's more freedom to just go and do something else. If I have a stiff back or whatever, you can hear that? If I have a stiff back here in my shop, I can just get up and walk around and stuff, and I can go somewhere. I can even go to the store, or I can do whatever I want to take a break. Whereas if I'm at work, I need to be there because someone could walk in and say, well, okay, we need this or that, this or that. If I'm not there, I'm neglecting my duties, right? So I got to be sitting there in many cases and not moving because they need me to be there when someone walks in the door. It's different. I don't want to go back to that environment because I could tell it was affecting my health in bad ways. All right. So yeah, I'll be discussing these thoughts and stuff. Eventually, as I get better at not contradicting myself and explaining myself better, I'll get into deeper topics. I realize that most of my stuff I do online is superficial and I just wing it. I want to get deeper into different topics. I think that's what will make the videos more successful, for one. And number two, keep me interested. Diving deeper, digging deeper, becoming more skilled. I think that would keep me interested. All right. So that's it for today. I'll try to do this every week, like I said, once a week, maybe more. Who knows? Probably not more, because if I try to dive deeper into these topics, it's going to require more and more research, and I've got to plan my time better and better. So this could take a long time to get to more than once a week. All right, so that's it. I'll see you next week.